September 15th, 1896. Two steam engine locomotives are travelling in opposite directions at high speed in Texas, USA. Sometime around 5 p.m, the two trains collide head-on, resulting in death and injury. How could two trains collide like this? Well, it was planned. Established in 1865, the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad, or MKT, also known as the Katy, operated an extensive network of railways in the states it was named for. As the railroad expanded, the Katy was left with a surplus of decommissioned 35 short-ton Baldwin engines, as they were replacing them with newer locomotives. Seeing the old engines go to waste, Katy passenger agent William Crush concocted a plan to generate publicity for the Katy Railroad by making use of these engines in an unusual fashion. Inspired by a recent staged crashing by the Columbus and Hocking Valley Railroad, Crush proposed that the Katy could similarly crash two old engines into one another in a spectacular event intended to draw new customers to the railroad. Crush's superiors accepted this proposal and put him in charge of the project, under the condition that the event could guarantee the safety of its spectators. Of particular concern were the steam engine's boilers. If they were to rupture in the crash, there would be a catastrophic explosion. Engineers evaluated the risk involved and concluded that the staged crashing would be safe, assuring Crush that the boilers could withstand large impacts and were designed to do so. And so, a site in Texas was chosen for the stage crashing and named Crush, after George Crush. Here, 4 miles of track was built alongside the Katy Railroad, so the crashing could be performed separate from the main track. Crush became a makeshift town, as water wells were drilled, telegraph offices were installed, and grandstands were erected. A circus tent housed a restaurant, and various stands sold various goods, as well as offering carnival games and sideshows. The Katy decided that this event would be free to attend, hoping to make their money back from the increased attention to the railroad, as well as various sponsorships that would be advertising at the event. This was not all though. They set up temporary routes to the site for a reduced admission, meaning spectators could take special excursion trains from any location in Texas to the event and back. Two 35 short-ton Baldwin engines were dusted off for the event and each given 6 boxcars to pull. The boxcars were adorned with sponsors' advertising. In the lead up to the crash, engineer crews ran the trains up and down the track, determining the point of impact and the speed at which they would collide. The engines then set out on a tour along the Katy, promoting the so-called Crash at Crush. This promotional campaign proved to be hugely successful, and on the date of the event, the 15th of September 1896, an estimated 40,000 people attended. They were to be kept 200 yards away from the crash site, while members of the press were allowed within 100 yards. At around 5 p.m, it was finally time for the main event. The two trains were rolled to their final destination point to allow for photos. Then they were each brought to the ends of the track. The crews on board opened and set the throttles, allowing the trains to begin accelerating before jumping off. The two trains were now on an unavoidable collision course. The trains rumbled down the tracks at an estimated speed of 50 miles per hour, before finally crashing together. The air was filled with the clattering of iron and splintering of wood, and then both trains' boilers exploded simultaneously, the resulting escape of pressure tearing the locomotives to pieces and sending them flying into the crowd. The crowd entered a panic as the debris rained on them. 2 people were killed outright after being struck by pieces of the trains, and more were injured. A photographer at the event lost an eye to a flying bolt immediately after taking this photo. But the disaster was over in a moment, and the crowd turned back to the wreckage to make off with lumps of iron, steel, and wood from the trains, souvenirs of the day. Reportedly, this caused more injury as people burnt their hands on the piping hot debris. In response to the disaster, the Katy immediately fired George Crush for his involvement in the incident. However, the crash did garner attention for the railroad and surprisingly did not generate much negative publicity. Despite the tragedy, the promotion was a success. George Crush was rehired and worked for the Katy until his retirement. The Katy settled lawsuits with victims' family members with payouts and lifetime rail passes, which was a small price to pay for the worldwide attention they had received. Many railroads staged similar crashes for years to come, hoping to achieve the same success as the crash at Crush. The story of the crash at Crush is emblematic of a different time, from the conception of the bizarre idea to the low cost of human life. Such an incident would have a very different outcome today if it were allowed to happen at all, which seems highly unlikely. Similarly, there are many dangerous events we allow to occur today that will maybe be perceived through a different lens in the future. So whether it be by crashing trains, racing cars, or walking a high wire, we still have no shortage of interesting ways to spend your last moments.